The history is quite interesting. It begins when I appeared on a BBC Radio 4 programme called The Commission, which you might know. And we recorded a programme which was about whether the expansion of higher education was a good thing or a bad thing. And the great and the good were wheeled out to quiz me about whether we needed more graduates or plumbers. And I made a number of points on that programme about the democratic advantages of widening participation in higher education. Following that, I was actually contacted by a representative of our major funder for this project, who asked me if there was any way in which he and his organisation could help develop the mission of the university. I think there was a sense that Brighton was making a case for growing out of the community and giving a lot back to the community. And he was interested in pursuing that. And that's the germ from which the notion of the Community University Partnership Project grew. It drew together some things the university was doing already, but it had an extra layer of external support that enabled us to move into some new, more experimental areas, and the results, I think, are beginning to bear fruit.
In the UK, at least, it's been relatively unusual for universities to take a particular interest in making a difference to their local communities on a social level. I think it's been a commonplace that universities have helped commercial organisations and businesses to innovate and to research and to develop themselves in all sorts of ways, and there's been a lot of attention placed on that. But in the main, there's been little activity that's linked the expertise, resources and facilities that are located within higher education and directed them towards social problems within local communities. There's been bits and pieces, there's been sporadic activity in a number of notable schemes. But I think what's different about the Community University Partnership Programme at Brighton University is that it attempts to link the whole of the university and its expertise and resources with its local communities. It's a strategic project in a way.
We do a lot of things to serve the needs of the economy by working with businesses. We do a lot of things to produce the surveyors, the architects, the teachers, the designers, the doctors, all those things that we all need, and that's our job, and we're proud to do it and think it's very important. But also part of our job is to help build and sustain, I think, people's ideas about citizenship, their ideas about how to work together in communities, providing them the resources to do that, to support ideas about environmental policy, about equalities, about communities working together, about art and architecture existing within people's lives for enjoyment, for fulfilment, to help them create and develop. I think the rounded picture to have all of those things in mind and see them all together, and I think the Cupp project has enabled us to fill another bit of that picture, which is often harder to fill because, for better or worse, current streams of public funding tend to favour things where the economic benefit is seen to be more immediate.
I suppose another fundamental aspect of Cupp is that it isn't our intention simply to do useful things in the local community. That's not sufficient. What we're after is something that changes and benefits the university as well. So it's very much a two-way process, very much about mutual benefit.
Just do a quick straw poll of who's actually been out to the South Downs before and visited and had a walk or taken their dog for a walk. There's not many of you. Part of the idea of this project is to get people out who don't normally visit the Downs. This is a place called New Timber Holt.
I thought, but it's such a beautiful place, that's okay by me. I don't adopt that, to be If you go out, or when you go out, for a phone between you, just in case you get on that little bit of paper, just keep it in your pocket.
People have learnt that they can overcome difficult circumstances through this project in the wood, and one of the Moulsecoomb mums said to me, well, maybe I will go back to university. She left at some point with some difficulties.
Oh yeah, I love getting muddy. I'm gutted I ain't a lake.
Just working with people that I've not normally worked with, and us all getting along as a team, working well together. Yeah, and completing this giant.
Right. So, yes, taking my homework home. Taking your homework home. I've got a car festival. That's nice.
And they're also developing community art skills. One of the things you need to do as an artist when you're out in the world is work out how to get commissions and how to, and that involves working with the community. So it's a great opportunity to get experience of what a community arts project is like, what are the points of doing it, and how you might need to set it up when you leave college.
Well, eventually the chalk's going to wash away with the rain and everything, and then by that time hopefully the moss will grow out, and then like if people do come and see it, then they're going to see it white, and then in a couple of months it's going to be green.
Yeah.
So it should be quite good.
Working with different people and everything, working with materials that I haven't worked with before, and just generally doing different things and being out in the open is really nice. Just doing things on a really large scale, which I'm really not used to.
Can everyone look this way? Achieved? Yeah, I love it! I love getting dirty, muddy. I just love all this. It's brilliant. Big achievement for me. See if you're on end now. All right, everyone smile.
It was very important to acknowledge the achievements on the Art in the Woods project because there were so many. The women really persevered, they really learnt, they really worked hard, they overcame all sorts of difficulties with the environment, the mud, the slopes, the cold, the weather, the rain. And they also overcame all sorts of kind of creative problems. You know, how do I fix that bit of wood to that? How do I make that look like a proper muscle on the thigh? Constantly, for the whole time we were in the wood, I was so impressed about how much overcoming the problems and how many kind of solutions there were to everything. Okay, we'll build a fire, we'll make tea, we'll use that piece of wood and that piece of wood to make that look like that. And people worked hard in an environment that they weren't used to. So we had a certificate giving ceremony just so the women could come to the university, meet the Vice-Chancellor, and in a kind of formal setting have that acknowledged, have people clap their achievements.
What makes Cupp particularly interesting is the nature of the dialogue between the community and the university that leads to the projects. We've created a space where our expertise and their needs and also their expertise in many instances can come together. We've had over 500 contacts from community-based organisations and groups to our help desk. This is a service that we operate to enable communities to have a sensible one-stop place to contact if they think they would like to work with or want some help from Brighton University.
Well, my name is Polly Rodriguez and I work for Cupp, and my job is to enable community groups to access research support here within the University of Brighton.
David's very practical message, particularly the notion of the help desk. The idea there has been one that's been talked about and in fact has been raised in Victoria as a potential strategy. That simple question of how do you enter a university, and the simple fact that it could be a phone number to one point, or it could be a... so some of the strategies that Cupp's developing, which are very practically driven towards access to the university, access to the knowledge and to the skills, so it's a definite model.
I think what's really interesting is the university's quite interested to know how they can apply some of the expertise they have to a real life setting. And that's what we want from the university, that's the exchange. So we know something about what parents of disabled children are saying are issues for them. We know something about what works. But what we get from the university is an additional layer, I think, of access to more information, research about what does and doesn't work, and an interest in testing out new theories, models, to check that they do work in practice.
If you're in a bad situation, well, people who've written all these books have basically come up with all sorts of ideas about what makes kids resilient, and we've organised them into these charts. So what I want you to do now is I'm going to get you...
So we already have a programme of workshops, for example, for parents focused on very particular practical themes. So because they were saying there's a whole issue for us about managing behaviour at home and managing our children's low self-esteem at home, then by chance that happened to match a piece of work that the university were already developing with other colleagues. So the two came together.
I want to go into the police for 4 years because then they'll pay for me to go to uni.
Oh, right.
And then I want to go into acting. And I was going to be a lawyer, but then I changed my mind because it's too much work. Oh, and I'm going to be a social worker in between that.
What we're actually doing is bringing the academic research alive and showing how people can use it in their everyday life. And we know from the evaluation work that we've done that it has actually made a difference both to parents and to practitioners. We've presented the work now around the world in various places, probably about 1,000 practitioners have seen us working with resilient therapy in a conference situation, and they've taken it to other client groups as well, not just children. We've had people from adult psychology wanting to work with a model, so it certainly has a life of its own.
Cupp has been initially funded by an organisation called the Atlantic Philanthropies, who awarded us funds to set up and run Cupp for 4 years, and we're just over halfway through that now. We have subsequently been successful in a bid to the Higher Education Funding Council for a programme called the Community Knowledge Exchange, which is part of Cupp.
I was brought in to lead a program that was not only about projects, that was not only project-based, but that was also a pilot program looking at how do partnerships actually work and what makes them work and what needs to be put in place and developed to support people from such a range of different organisations and university schools and faculties. I mean, the diversity is just immense. You've got architects, you've got people interested in cement, you've got people interested in football, you've got people interested in disadvantaged children, you've got LGBT people who are trying to work against the high rates of suicide in the LGBT community. So within the university you've got this immense diversity of approaches, of disciplinary models, people coming from all over the place. And then in terms of community organisations, the same thing, just an immense diversity, so that you've got Mind, you've got LGBT groups, you've got carers groups, you've got parents groups, you've got groups of older people. So it's the challenge is you've got such a massive range of people doing such a massive range of different things, all that have a passion for helping people who are, well, that sounds incredibly patronising, for working with disadvantaged people locally.
I'd say that a society is judged by how it treats its most vulnerable citizens. These people have a right to a really high quality of life. They overcome enormous difficulties to live a life, and by responding to their particular needs, you can really improve their experience of being alive. That's fundamentally what we're interested in. Stretching potential, revealing talent, and making really good art. And a project like this does that for everyone involved, not just the people with learning disabilities.
I think we need more ink, you know. Do you want to put some more ink on, then you can have a go?
I've learned a lot more about observation and how people, other people perceive the world and how other people look at other things in the world. So in the beginning we did still life, and it was interesting to see how sort of I draw exactly, but the lady I was working with just complete abstracted just based on the colour, and that was fascinating to see how. And it was very, we did visual communications with talking, but with drawing, and that was amazing to see how much you can actually communicate with art.
It's taught me to look at things in a different way, to be less worried about aesthetics and more interested in process. I'd never done any printmaking before, and that's what I've learned while I've been here, and to be less controlling and less of a perfectionist.
The connection between the School of Art and artists with learning disabilities through our Access to Art project has been remarkable. When you see the connection between the university students, often who will be 19, 20 years old, and the artists with learning disabilities who hitherto have been excluded from developing their art and earning money from their art, to see them working together and to see the kind of mutual benefit. The benefit to the artists with learning disabilities has always been apparent. They're actually having a chance to develop their work and their skills massively, and they're clearly hugely enjoying that.
At this school, we've been asked to now look at a second stage of development, which is to design classrooms which can operate in the school grounds, outdoor classrooms.
They know what they want, and they can tell you about it too. I think the first thing is got to be practical. So the architects came and they built shelters in the grounds, and the children had an input into what they liked and what they didn't like, what was good about it, what wasn't so good. And now they'll go away and come up with some ideas and designs and models to show the children, and they'll talk about them. They'll bring them back in and they'll give their views on them and what they like, what they don't like, and what they want and what's practical. I think that's the important thing, you know, that they have their say, really.
I feel they've developed a real ownership of it, because they worked so closely with us on the design, and they were here watching us build it a lot of the time as well. So I think they really feel it's their own, and they take care of it as well.
It's developed their interest and motivation in learning, and learning in the outside environment as well as the inside environment. I think it's also led to develop their self-esteem. They feel better about themselves because they're involved in a process of improving their school.
Our interest right now and our commitment is to say, can we connect a lot of these activities, continue to build on the relationships we've got, work with groups like Cupp, learn from and share across the networks. I saw recently and today in the think tank paper review today this notion of almost like Napster. Could we set up a C drive across all of the networks, and we swap files on projects that are working? And I think that is the future. I think it's that thing of we are very much interested in the Creative Commons, public access to our content and so forth. Could we find new ways to partner and share information that in fact can help at the local, global level? And they're the sorts of questions for the future that we're thinking both in a practical and a strategic way. So, and we see Cupp as a world leader in that regard, so I want to work with Cupp and groups like Cupp in the UK. So.
Well, I happen to believe that universities they're obviously think tanks, so where people sit in a very privileged position get paid to think. Now that's great, and I've done that all my life. But they also have a duty, a duty of care, in my view, to the surrounding areas, and certainly a duty of analysis. So we're paid, in a sense, to look at the situation, say what's gone wrong, and if possible to induce people to think about what's gone wrong, and then to induce them, because it's affecting them, to develop ways by which they can begin to redress the situation themselves. And I think Cupp-type activities, in terms of empowering people, in terms of giving people access to education, adult learning, leisure facilities and so on that they would not previously have without a special program, is all part of that. Now, it's not enormous. I think one has to say that there need to be Cupps all around the country in order to have, you know, a quantum effect on this situation.